Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Happy to have you at our Entrepreneurs Being More. We are continuing a series that we started before Thanksgiving, and we'll continue it this evening. Maybe for a moment, just before we start, I'm wondering if Ben can comment on something that's happening currently in Nikken that's quite amazing. I think many people are noticing. We're having a lot of rank advancements happening. And Ben, maybe you can give us some thoughts on the exciting news that's coming out. Of course, we have to wait until Grace Sai at Nikken verifies everything that people have been kind of announcing here and there on WhatsApp. But Ben, any thoughts about what's going on with rank advancing in the month of November, even with a little bit of a glitch in our IT department and our online services? What do you think about what's been happening?
Well, first of all, I think it's fantastic, but I also think that it was that very glitch that has stimulated some of the growth that we're experiencing, because what we've got is a number of people that are taking advantage of the double points that have been offered to us to compensate for that time that was lost. Yeah, and so if there's anyone between now and the 17th that's thinking maybe I could rank advance with double points, it's going to cost you half as much in the product sales that you have, in the customer acquisition, in the business activity that you've got going on in your organization. You could get there in half the time. Which is great. So what I've seen is a lot of people are going, I'm going to seize this moment and I'm going to really run at my goals and make something happen with these double points. And as a result, I think we're seeing, Sophia Demuccio's just rank advanced to gold, which is awesome. Sherry Danzig has just rank advanced to diamond, which is just fantastic. Again, really incredible. We've had other golds that have rank advanced. And of course, Leo LeMay is just on fire with his business, just with month after month after month, or week after week right now, producing new silvers, which is great.
Yeah, it seems like every time I go on WhatsApp, Leo has announced a new silver.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's fantastic.
So as many of you may remember, last time we were talking about this idea of really getting a lot of clarity in our minds and in our lives in terms of the exact results we want, of really knowing what it is we want to get out of life, and specifically what it is we want to get out of our Nikken business. And hopefully you had a chance to review, if you weren't with us last time, the recording that we sent out, and we'll record all of these Zooms so people have access to them. But last time we were talking about 3 areas that we might want to get clarity about in our Nikken business: income, and getting clear about long-term and also short-term, knowing, over the next month, the next 6 months, what kind of goals we might want to have in that area of income, but also knowing long-term, what is it that we're looking for when it comes to that aspect of our Nikken business. The idea of influence, and how do we want to affect the lives of other people, whether it's in terms of being a leader who leads and guides a team, a group of people, or whether it is having a positive impact on people who are looking for growth in their own health, their own wellness, and also the idea of community and what kind of a community we want to create. Yes, all of us are part of a global wellness community, but you personally, you individually, what kind of a community do you want in terms of those people that you're working with, that you're surrounded with, that you are involving yourself with, and what does that look like exactly for you? And we're part of a great business model where people can approach the business from different ways and decide what that community is like for them personally. What levels of commitment, involvement do they want to have? And last time, if you remember, Ben asked very specific questions, 3 specific questions. What's my dream? How badly do I want it? And what price am I willing to pay to get it? Those 3 questions. So when thinking about this first area of income specifically, and it may apply to the other areas as well, but when we think about income and how we want Nikken to operate as a business for us, answering those three questions probably makes a lot of sense. I did send those questions out. What's my dream? How badly do I want it? What price am I willing to pay to get it? And I asked people to think about those questions in terms of their business and income. And I'm just wondering, maybe we could start and we could have people answer this question. So that first question, what's my dream? What is my long-term, big picture, end goal, end result? What's my dream? And baby Ben, maybe you could give us, I almost called you baby Ben because my nephew is Ben. He's 20 years old now and, you know, dating and almost ready to get married, but his mom calls him baby Ben. So you're now baby Ben. Sorry, but you are younger than me. Anyhow, baby Ben. Ben's always been the bigger brother. I'm young, I'm older than Ben, but he's always been the big brother. I don't know how that happens, but that's just how life is. So anyhow, Ben, what's my dream? Give us some context and then let's open it up and have maybe people share with us their answer to that question.
Okay. Well, one thing that I would suggest that is important for us to differentiate when we're establishing what our dream is that it's centered really on purpose. You know, when we're looking at our entrepreneurial dreams, it's really driven by purpose. There's something that my wife and I, we've been talking about this with our kids a lot recently, our older children, you know, as the ones that are in college and ready to leave high school and move on and all that kind of stuff, is when people lack purpose, they pursue pleasure. Yeah, I'll say that again, because that's really at the heart of what we're talking about here. When people lack purpose, they pursue pleasure. Now, this is really important when it comes to establishing what is my dream, because in many instances, when people are defining their dreams, they pursue pleasure. Yeah, now pleasure can be very short-lived. It can be quite unfulfilling. It can fill a gap short-term. But when we pursue purpose, and when that purpose resonates with our core values, then we will find our journey very pleasurable. Yeah, but if there isn't purpose in our pleasure, then we're just passing our time, aren't we? And what I find is when people don't have a defined purpose that they're pursuing in Nikken, when their goals and their dreams and their aspirations aren't purpose-centered, the challenge becomes that they become pleasure-centered and they look for ways to have fun in Nikken. We want to have fun, and that's important. But what it means is we start treating our business differently. It becomes a social club versus a business vehicle to help me achieve bigger goals. Yeah. So it's really important that we get purpose at the center of our dreams, because that will impact the way that we treat our business and the way that we approach it when the going gets tough. If it's just pleasure, well, pleasure comes and goes. So if I'm having a bad time, I can stop right now and pick it up later. Yeah, it impacts my commitment, doesn't it? But if it's purpose-centered, then when the going gets tough, I keep at it anyway, because I've got a deeper purpose, a bigger meaning. Yeah. So I think that's really important. So that's what I would say, Jeff, just starting out, before people share, you know, their dreams about Nikken, is that we've got to keep it purpose-centered. Otherwise, we end up being pleasure-centered and focusing on the wrong things.
Yeah, I think that's a really important concept, purpose-centered and keeping things purpose-centered. So in sharing or in answering that question, maybe consider that. I think that's good advice. Anybody want to share? What have your thoughts been as you've thought about big picture? What is it your dream that you're pursuing through the vehicle of Nikken? Anybody want to share with the whole group?
Shall I start us off? Just to,
yeah, of course.
Yeah, maybe.
I think, yeah, please do.
My purpose in Nikken is really quite simple. It's twofold. One is I'm a provider of a family of 10. And I've shared this before. I take that responsibility very, very seriously. I love my wife and I love my children, and I don't want to do a bad job of that. I want to do a great job. So one of my primary objectives and purposes in Nikken is to provide financial independence for my family, and to do that in a meaningful way that gives them opportunities and choices with abundance. So that's one part. The other part is, because that's an end result, which if you don't have a meaningful purpose behind it, that engages the day-to-day, that can become monotonous perhaps, yeah, if it can become like a job. The other thing is to have maximum impact with those that I serve. I love the aspect of this business that allows me to coach and mentor, and to teach and train. That bit to me is wonderfully fulfilling. That's why when Jeff asked me to be on this call, I was more than happy not just to do it once, but to say, let's make a series out of it. Yeah, because being able to help other people change their lives is the greatest feel-good factor around. So I want to provide financial independence for my family and do that in a way that has maximum impact for good on helping other people do the same. Change their lives in some way. And it may not be financial independence for other people. It may be other things where they develop their self-esteem, or they grow in self-confidence, or they achieve certain milestones that just give them a great feel-good factor. But that chance to really just make a difference is hugely valuable to me, and is at the source of my purpose, along with front and center my family.
Ben, thank you. So let's open it up. And I think it's important. Many of you have probably written some ideas about what your end results and objectives you're looking for. But I think in addition to writing, it's important to verbalize, to share it. So maybe when you're thinking about income, influence, community, being purpose-centered, what is your dream? What's the dream that you have? Renee, Ron, would you like to share with the group?
I had written down, I want to create a residual income that allows me to play when I want, support who I want, and inspire others to create the vision of their dreams.
Nice. Really good.
That's awesome. Ron, Renee, thank you. Karen, did you want to share?
Yes, thank you, Jeff. I've always had this vision of a better world. I've never liked the negativity. And to that end, I find that Nikken is a wonderful vehicle in which to jump on the bus, so to speak, and do that. Along the way, I have found that people are miserable when they don't feel well. And being a certified facilitator and combining that, it fits right in with humans being more, which I absolutely love. And so I'm able to do all of the things that I do, offer the things that I do to people through Nikken, and help make this world, as Ben was saying, a better world, one person at a time. And when I do that, one person, it changes their world.
Mm.
And then that can be shared with other people. It's like paying it forward. And so I like doing that. And I'm working on my goals for next year. But that's my big goal. That's my purpose. That's my mission.
Mm. I love that. Can I just make a comment? That I love this point of one person at a time. Yeah, because we live in a world right now that is really, there is so much demand that a number of different generations feel, particularly the younger generation though, where they feel like I'm making a difference if I have a large following on social media. Yeah, and there are even companies and people that will buy friends online, in the sense of, they're not in the sense of meaningful friendships, but in the sense of likes and follows, and they feel like because they've got that they're having some meaningful contribution. And the reality is the best feel-good factor comes when you have those one-on-one moments, isn't it? To me, the one-on-one moments are the best. You know, you can have a crowd of people you're talking to, but if you have one person that you connect with, that's where the best stuff happens. So I love that point, Karen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Dawn Marie, did you want to share with the group?
Sure. Thank you, Jeff. And Ben, it's good to see you here tonight. And I'm glad that you have taken on this group to mentor, because I think that's a valuable piece of what I am getting from Nikken, is having the leadership here to help new people who are coming into this business be able to create whatever it is that they want for themselves. So thank you for showing up tonight. For me, I would like to be able to help folks to find rejuvenation in their bodies. I was in two rear-end car accidents back to back in 2019 and 2020. And if it had not been for someone coming to me with these products, made a significant change in my life, and I'm recovered today as a result of using these products. So I want people to be able to experience that same thing. I do recognize the fact that I can have an amazing business with this entity, and right now learning as much as I can about how to say what I need to say to people and how to share it with them in a way that they can receive it. I want to be able to offer them that way of being without being hooked on, you know, pharmaceuticals, if I can say that. And, you know, I think this company provides that. So being able to provide rejuvenation in people's lives with these products, personal development by being on calls like this, and just being able to have a business in COVID, that just really excited me when I had that opportunity to start this thing, that, you know, the sky's the limit. So I'm excited about what this opportunity presents, and I want to be able to give back. I have people on my list that I'm like, you guys, this is it. But I recognize that I can't make them want it. They have to experience it for themselves. So my goal is to help them to experience what this opportunity can present to them.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Dawn Marie, thank you. Anyone else want to share with the group, what do you see as your dream in terms of your Nikken business, your Nikken connection? What's the dream? Hattie Jane?
I want to be a part of the movement that makes this a part of Nikken becoming the global go-to place where you find insight into yourself, on your health, on your spirit, whatever you feel is weak in your area, and be surprised so that you find your own sight within yourself because of how the products can work and the whole interactive products work.
Hattie Jane, thank you. Thanks for sharing. Anyone else want to cover that question? What's my dream? Anyone else thought about the concept and want to share with the group? Then should we move on to that next question? This one, I think, this one is a little challenging, because how does someone ascertain and answer this follow-up question when identifying, you know, how motivated am I to get it? How badly do I really want it? How passionate am I about it? How does someone answer that question appropriate for themselves?
I think a starting point is, where do your thoughts go when you don't have to think? Yeah, someone once said to me, tell me what you think about when you don't have to think, and I'll tell you what kind of person you are. Yeah, where does your mind go in its idle time? And if it goes to your goals and your ambitions with Nikken, that's a starting point. That's a good starting point, because we will achieve what we're constantly desiring. the challenge for many people, I had this experience once when I was in England. I was running a workshop for some Nikken distributors, and we were talking about the importance of having a strong why, right? And we've kind of talked about that principle right now, haven't we? And saying, what are our goals and aspirations and so on. And we said, when you've got a strong why, you'll always find a how. Yeah, but you've got to have the strong why first. And it's interesting. I used this example. My friend shared this with me once. He said, I want you to imagine that there are two towers, two sky-rise buildings side by side, and going across the top of them is a steel I-beam. Do you know what those I-beams are? They're shaped like a capital I, one of those big beams. He says there's an I-beam that goes across from one end, from one building to the next. He said, you're on one building and I'm on the other. He says, and in my hand, I have a briefcase with $5 million in it. He said, would you walk across that I-beam for that $5 million? Let's have a show of hands. He says, by the way, it's windy up here. And so, we're a long way up. We're on the top of a high-rise building. So that I-beam is kind of swaying just a little bit in the wind, and it's drizzling a little bit. So it's a little bit damp. Would you walk across that I-beam for $5 million? Now I can see Maureen shaking her head. No, I would not walk across, not even for $5 million. Now, interestingly, when you ask that question, most people in the audience say no, right? They won't. He said, now let's imagine a different scenario. He said, let's imagine now I'm not a very nice person. And instead of having a briefcase full of money to offer you, I have one of your children and I'm holding them over the edge. Would you walk across that I-beam now? Now, yeah, Maureen, I'm afraid of heights too. Yeah, but if someone had one of my children at the other end, would I walk across? Yeah, I'd be on my hands and knees, but I would get across. Yeah, we'd do it. He said, and this is the point, when you have a strong enough why, you'll always find a how. We were talking about this, and I was asking different people in the audience what their why was, their reason. And this one lady put her hand up at the front of the room. She was like, I want to just help everyone appreciate the value of their health. It's so important to me. And her eyes are just glowing with excitement. She's just on the edge of her seat. She's so enthusiastic. She said, because I've just recently overcome a terminal illness. And as a consequence of that, my appreciation for life, for mortality, is just so different. And I just want everyone to appreciate that, take full advantage of their health, and help them make good choices. So she's sharing this compelling story. I noticed something though behind her as she's sharing this, and everyone else is looking quite excited, kind of catching fire with her enthusiasm. There's this one lady sat behind her with her arms folded and her brow furrowed. Yeah, she's looking a little aggravated by the story. The lady finishes her story and she raises her hand. She goes, excuse me, Ben, I've got a problem with that. Right? I said, okay, let's hear it. Let's put it on the table. She said, well, I've never had a terminal illness. She said, I'm not saying I want one. And, all of my applause for you and your recovery. She said, but my point is, so often we hear about these people that have come from these terribly dark places that give them this great impetus to come out into a great spot. They come from the ashes of poverty and they rise up to be champions of industry, for example, or someone that has overcome this great obstacle and they go on to become victors and heroes in other ways. She said, I've not had those experiences. She said, I feel like a big tree, but with little roots. Yeah, I've got a great desire. I've got a desire to achieve a lot, but I've not had those compelling experiences that give me that strong desire to get it done. And I thought that is perhaps the most profound observation that I've really heard. I asked the audience for a show of hands, how many of you relate to this lady who feel like a big tree with little roots? 80% of the audience put their hand up. Yeah, most people haven't had those big compelling experiences to give them that strong drive. And this is the point that I want to make, Jeff, is for us to be able to grow and develop that drive, that desire to want it bad enough, when in reality, most of us don't. Yeah. The vast majority of us don't want it bad enough. Otherwise, we'd get it done. We'd crawl across the I-beam. Yeah, we'd make it happen. But most of us go, it's a bit windy. It's a bit high. Maybe not. Yeah. And we step back. I said, look, the answer to this, if you really want to get to the other side, is in the very metaphor that you gave us. You gave an example of being a big tree with little roots. Well, the reality is the root system takes time to grow. The roots are like your desires. And sometimes you might feel buried in the dirt, and you're going to have to start with a little bit of hope, a little bit of aspiration, a little bit of a dream, even if it's small. And the starting point for me is just wanting to believe. Yeah. Sometimes I've heard it said that all you got to do is believe that you can do it and you'll make it happen. Yeah. But what if you don't? What if you don't believe that you can make it happen? The biggest barrier for most people in this business is their self-belief. And belief, by nature of what it is evidence-based. So if I'm lacking the evidence, where do I start? I start with a desire to believe. I just want to believe that I can get this done. And then you work with that wanting, and you plant that in the ground, and you nurture it like a little seed. And you water it and you feed it, and you do that by attending classes like this, by participating in HBM, by reading inspiring books, by doing a little bit. And as we put little bits of effort in on a consistent basis, what then starts to happen is we get evidence presented to us from the results of our efforts that we can do it. So that wanting to believe then starts to turn into a little bit of belief. And that little bit of belief, as we nurture it and feed it, turns in time to a greater sense of hope and a greater sense of belief. And it becomes a virtuous circle. But the key ingredient is patience and persistence. Yeah. And sometimes we don't wait until the feeling comes. We work and create the feeling ourselves. There's been plenty of times where I've done the right thing when I've not wanted to do the right thing, but I know I should. And then after doing it, the feeling came and I go, I'm glad I did that. Yeah. But if I always waited for that feeling to come first, nothing would happen, or occasionally it would. Yeah. So the critical point to this question, because this to me is one of the biggest ones, do I want it bad enough? Honestly, most people don't. So I want to put that out there to perhaps give some peace of conscience. Yeah. That you're not alone if you relate to that. Yeah. Because every now and then we will get daunted at what we see in front of us as what's required. So that's okay if we don't want it enough yet. What we recognize is that wanting grows in time as we feed it. And it's like a root system for a tree. It will get deeper and stronger and stronger and stronger over time, the more we feed it. But the starting point is wanting to believe. What a great and glorious and merciful starting point that the world has given us. Yeah, I think that's fantastic because it gives us a wonderful a level playing field. We can all start with a want, a desire to believe, and then we just let that belief grow, and we put some effort in there. So that would be that's my counsel. Is how do we know? We just start with wanting to believe. We feed that a little bit, plant the seed, recognize that every now and then we're going to feel like we're covered in mud, that we're buried in the dirt, but recognize that you're not buried, you're planted. You're planted. And there is a huge difference to being buried and being planted. And being planted means there are seasons of growth, and some of that growth happens beneath the dirt and it's invisible to us. And then one day you realize something's been happening here. I can feel a change in me. I can see a change coming out in my results now. And then something starts to shift. And then we get a little bit more confidence and we start to grow, but we've got to see it as a journey, not an event. Sometimes people get crash courses in that. They'll get a terminal illness they'll get thrown up against a brick wall and hit rock bottom, and they'll lose their job, and they'll have their financial resources strained, and they'll have no other option but to be, with their backs against the wall, with on what they call death ground in the battlefield. When your ships have been burned and you've got nowhere else to go but forwards. Yeah. When you're on that spot, you start to fight. And sometimes people get a crash course in that because life throws it at them. But we don't often choose it for ourselves. We don't often voluntarily burn our own ships. Yeah. We don't do that. We don't voluntarily give ourselves a crisis. That can accelerate the learning. But for most of us, it's a little bit at a time, slow and steady, a little bit of patience, a little bit of consistency, keeping at it and letting it grow. And that's the process. So I mean, that's my answer to the question. And I hope that covers, I know we're taking one question at a time for each of these classes. But I hope that gives some good ground for what can I do to feed my wanting. I want to believe more. Yeah, I believe in myself a little bit, but I know that I need to believe more. How can I feed that? Start by wanting it. Paint a picture, connect with that vision or your aspirations, your dreams. Feed it just a little bit. Be patient, be persistent, and see it as a seasonal journey through life. And doing that, we can reach a point where we can go, my belief and my desire to achieve is growing. And then eventually we reach a point where we're at an all-time high and we're running 100 miles an hour and we're charging at the finish line because we know we can do it. But you know what? That is often the case when the end is in sight. But this is a long journey and the end isn't in sight to begin with. Yeah. I'm confident Sherry Danzig, who has worked for 24 years to become a diamond in our business. Yeah. What a journey she's had. What a story she's going to tell when that becomes official. But I guarantee you that her belief and her confidence shot through the roof over these last few weeks as she saw the end in sight. Yeah. So see the difference there. It doesn't start shooting through the roof. It gets there at the right time. Yeah. For many of us, let's build it bit by bit.
Ben, thank you. I do want us to continue to focus on these questions. I think it is important to get clarity about this idea of what is my dream, identifying that fully, thinking about it in terms of purpose and making sure that we're purpose-centered, as you mentioned, and not purely pleasure-centered. And then applying that idea of my dream to those three areas, dividing it out. How does that look in terms of income? How does it look in terms of influence? How does it look in terms of the community? Whether that community is your family, your neighbors, or a global community for you. So let's continue working through that. And perhaps next time we can start a little bit on that third and final question of identifying, well, once I'm more clear about how badly it is I actually want that dream. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to change your dream partway through the process. We might be constantly updating and revising our dream, but identifying how badly is it that I want it, what's the price that I'm willing to pay for it. Yeah. So thank you everybody for joining us tonight. Ben, thank you again for joining us, our second Zoom. We'll continue this series as we work through these ideas and really help people, I think, get a lot of clarity about what end results that they do want from their Nikken business. Everybody, in about 26 minutes, our kickoff call is happening for December. You do not want to miss it. I'm sure there's going to be some great updates and announcements, all the amazing things. I have no doubt that we'll have as many or more amazing rank advancements happening at the end of this year as people finalize their qualifications for Team Taishi, Team Kaizen, Club Ki, Pro. So lots of great things for sure are ahead. So we'll see everyone in about 25 minutes for our kickoff Zoom. Ben, thank you again. Have a great evening, everyone, and we'll see you next Wednesday. Good night, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great night. We'll see everyone soon.